From the old arcade games to the higher games like Pal World, every game has a form of challenge, which is usually from getting to point A to point B with increasing level of difficulty. However, some people that should be enough for them. For more stronger and more competitive gamers, it's not enough. So people have made harder challenges over the years to the point where even game devs even encouraging it. For Postal 2 having a ludicrous mode, which is 10 times harder than it is on impossible mode, and for more harder game settings where it has nightmare, impossible, and even higher words that even I can't comprehend. And of course, Pokemon is no different. From shiny hunting, Nuzlocke, heck, people have made even ROM games just to make it much more harder, just to prove that they're the best. Like no one ever was. However, there's actually one more challenge that people have made that I'm starting to notice has becoming a reoccurring thing, which is the Ribbon Master Challenge, which goes as such. Picking a Pokemon of your choosing from either Pokemon Colosseum or Pokemon Gale of Darkness, and having them piggyback through every form of generation, acquiring every known ribbon in the process. Now, this is a really fun challenge, and it is something that would be interesting to do, given that of my knowledge of Pokemon. However, there is one thing that is stopping me. From the ones that I've seen, most of them are relying on the physical consoles, which is like the GameCube, the Nintendo DS, the Game Boy Advance, the 3DS, etc. And getting my hands on all of them is a bit of a hurdle, which is going to cost well over $100, if not even more. And that's not even mentioning the games itself, let alone the cores of the older games. So, instead of, having money grow on trees, I decided to do the second best thing, and in the form of using emulators instead. Now, before I continue this, there is going to be at least one jackass in the comments saying something around the lines of, "Oh no, Byte, you shouldn't be doing that. That's cheating and unfair. It's not in the spirit of the challenge." And for that, I say two particular things. First off, I do not care. Your opinion means absolutely nothing to me, and yeah. And second of all, you're not technically wrong, but you're not right either. Yes, unlike the physical copies, the emulators make it a lot more easier to cheat on it. Heck, that's even one in the settings. So, to make things more easier and also to make it more fair, later on the line, I will be adding rules that I'll be pointing out later on in the video. Yes, I haven't done every of the rules. That's because at the time, I really didn't think about it until roughly about till I reached Pokemon Emerald, which I will point out later on. Now to start off the challenge. Like I said, it has to be in Pokemon Gale of Darkness or the Colosseum games, and you pick a Pokemon of your choosing. Now, normally people in the contest would usually pick one Pokemon to it. However, there is one hurdle that comes to. You also have to make sure that they're compatible through every single generation. So it is very hard to do, and some people have had difficulties of picking. So, and of course me being very indecisive, I have not one, not two, but 5 Pokemon on this joyride, and some 2 that's kind of piggybacking. So, out of the 5 Pokemon I've picked a Snorunt, which I named Urey, a Primate I named Kratos, my Ninetales I named Renamon, an Umbreon I named Crythia, and a Gyarados I named Jormungandr. What's that? How did I get myself a Gyarados, even though that's impossible to get? Well, it's quite simple. You see, I went to a particular software that I'm going to explain later on in this video, and promptly turned this Pokemon into a Magikarp. Is it cheating? Yeah. Did I turn all of them into shinies? Yeah. Do people really care? As far as I'm aware, no. Is it technically a problem that my Pokemon is becoming a Gyarados, even though it's not possible in traditional means? Yeah, that's true. Do I care about that? Not really, and I'm pretty sure other people won't really care at all. Because let's be honest, the main point of this challenge is the challenge itself, not the Pokemon that's doing it. So, at least we got that out of the way, we can start with the actual main challenges. For Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, there are actually 2 ribbons you can get your hands on. The first one is actually quite easy. The National Ribbon can only be acquired once you purify a Shadow Pokemon, which can be used by either using the Agate Village or using a Purification Chamber that is only available in the Gale of Darkness games. Think of it more as you have a Shadow Pokemon that needs a high form of friendship, and you do such as walking around, battling other Pokemon with this said Pokemon. Give it drugs. I'm sorry, I meant to say vitamins. And also give it perfume, because why not? Also, in Gale of Darkness, the Purification Chamber, you can simply put your Pokemon in there and have a bunch of other Pokemon with a same level of syncing and have them do a little dance. And will drastically decrease its range until it becomes open-hearted. Once there, you go to this particular rock, you slap it a few times, and then bada bing bada boom, it's not a shadow anymore. And it gets a ribbon out of thin air. Okay then. Anyways, next one. The next one is the Earth Ribbon, which is actually a little bit harder compared to the last one. See, for this one, you have to go to Mount Battle and win up to 100 consecutive battles, which ranges from level 1 all the way up to level 70, which is not that hard as long as you have a strong enough Pokemon that is probably around 100, but there are 3 things to consider. The first one being the Pokemon of your challenge cannot exceed level 50. Which is something I'm going to explain once we get in Hoenn. And for number 2, later on, once it becomes higher level, you're going to be dealing with a lot more complications because later on, their AI is a lot more crafty and able to use synergy skills. Since it's a double battle, you'll actually have some unique combos like Rain Dance and Thunder, Earthquake and Protect, and others so forth. The main ones you should be watching out for is the Rain and Thunder combo. And one thing, and I'm surprised some people don't even point this one out, there is roughly 2 or 3 trainers in the later games that will actually have a unique combo of using Protect, some Ghost Pokemon, and Self-Destruct or Explosion, which in synergy-wise is actually quite amazing. Not only that it basically protects themselves from the explosion in this game, it does a massive amount of damage. And if you're not careful, it most likely will guarantee a knockout of your Pokemon, unless they have a good enough defense or they're a high enough level. Once you find a way of negating those, there are other Pokemon with certain moves and abilities, like Togekick learning Follow Me, and other Pokemon like Wonder Guard. I'm looking at you, pest. Once you get a high enough level of Pokemon, you can breeze by this really quickly. And then you go up to the last guy, which is no joke really hard. From Pokemons like Metagross, Salamence, and Slacking of all Pokemon. And not to mention they double team it with Latios and Latias. This guy is actually quite a formidable foe and requires a lot more strategies to just overpower him. Once you beat him, simply grab the ribbon, get a free starter Pokemon, and that's all for it in the Ore region. Now we have to move to the Hoenn to get our more ribbons. Which leads into a problem. Because we're using emulators, we can't get through the traditional means. Well, not necessarily. See, I probably should have mentioned that if you're using a Dolphin emulator and an MGB-A emulator, they are actually quite comparable to each other, and you can actually use this in the traditional way if you were doing it on a console. The problem was, I don't remember how I did it. I remember looking up through multiple hours trying to figure out how to do it, and I did get it to work. But I'm going to be honest, I'm not skilled enough to explain this, let alone in this video. So I highly recommend you look someone else for better information and better logic. However, it's not all gloom and gloom because there is one particular program which you're most likely going to be relying on for the rest of this, and that's using PK Hex, which, boiling down, it's just a simple software that can go into your game's save files and can basically look and browse as you please. From looking for your Pokemon stats, altering it, looking at their PC, also looking at your trainer ID, alter files, and blah blah blah, that general gist. Which is the reason why I'm able to turn this Pokemon into this Pokemon. However, we're not actually doing that for that particular reason. Our main reason is to copy our Pokemon, which I do encourage you to do this daily because unlike physical copies, I don't really trust the emulators that much. Whether it's coding or misguidedness, because I accidentally deleted my Soul Silver's copy and nearly lost all of my progress, you have to make sure that you keep your Pokemon safe. So I recommend you saving your Pokemon into your computer from time to time. That way you don't lose any too much progress in the inevitable time you ended up losing all of it. Once you do that little transfer, now we're in Pokemon Emerald. Correction, we're doing Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. That I'm going to have to explain later. Yeah. Anyways, so in jumping into Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, the first thing you immediately need to get off the bat is to do the battle tower. Two of them particularly. The first one is the level 50 and the next one is level 100. The reason I say this for keeping your Pokemon at level 50 is because the level 50 battle tower doesn't nerf Pokemon that are higher level, which is a problem that they ended up fixing later on. So as long as you have a Pokemon level 50 and under, you're basically good to go. And then for level 100 is a respectable level 100. The reason I say you do Ruby and Sapphire rather than Emerald is because the Emerald's battle tower is a lot more competitive. And by competitive, I mean basically just unfair. From more harder Pokemon later down the line to even some movesets that are just straight up infuriating. Even ones that are just straight up instant kill.
Son of a bitch!
Not to mention they gamble a lot to the point where they're even winning most of the time. But Ruby and Sapphire didn't have that particular problem and are more laid back. But it ain't no cakewalk. As long as you have a good, decent team, you're basically golden. Once you beat them with a 56 consecutive battles, with a few break times within each 7 turns, once you get all of that, you get your ribbons, and then on to the next one. The rest should be quite simple. You can get the effort ribbon badge by maximizing your Pokemon's EV, which for people that know how to EV train, I actually quite pity you people. But for people that don't know how to EV train, it's quite simple. You simply run around and you basically just battle Pokemon. Every time you battle a Pokemon, you receive a single EV stat. Once you stack them up to the hundreds is when you maximize most of them. Each Pokemon is unique, and I'm not going to go over the damn list. So there are 2 other options. Option 1, you grind money like hell, like you're a Jew. By that, I mean you get a lot of money, you spend it on drugs, I'm sorry, I meant to say vitamins, and you just pump your Pokemon full of EVs until they're at max. Once you talk to this lady, they'll show how appreciative they are of how beautiful they are and whatever, and then you get yourself the ribbon. Next one is champions, and I don't need to explain why. Once you beat Steven or Wallace, depending on which game, you're getting the next ribbon. Good for you. And then next is the contest. No. See, the contest ribbons are a pain in the neck, and I could go over this, but there is one thing I have to mention. There is an additional ribbon you need to get, which is the artist ribbon. Basically, before you start any of the contests, you need to go here and talk to this guy, which will also be observing you during the contest. Once you have the highest amount of points possible in the master ranks, he will walk up to you and presenting you a painting. Once you show him the painting and then you say yes to it, he will gladly give you the artist ribbon for said Pokemon. Doesn't need to be every specific rank, it just needs to be one to get this. Now for the contest. For this, it boils down to beating 4 ranks with the 5 categories. And for that is cool, tough, beauty, smart, and cute. Each of the contests is comprised of 2 stages. The contest condition and the contest appeal. For the contest condition, it basically boils down to how high is your stats depending on specific categories, which are all going to be starting at 0 for every Pokemon. And the only way you can increase this is by using the Pokeblocks, which you have to make for yourself by using the berries that you acquired. Which I recommend use the decent of the Palmeg, Kelpie, and Qualot, which are good in their own right, but there's actually a way to get better ones. If you go back to Mount Battle, you can actually earn those coupons that you got and exchange them for stronger berries. Though you can only get 1 of them, and you're most likely going to need at least maybe 5 or 10 berries to do this. So you can do 2 methods. Option 1, you can just grind a shit ton of them and resort to using berries and planting and be a farmer. Or you can do the method I decided to do because I am very impatient, and that's the form of glitches. Now, before I say anything, I don't fully condone with glitches, but I'm mostly condoning in the sense of cheating, in the sense of having infinite master balls, infinite rare candies, and then just snapping your fingers and then turning them into a shiny. However, this one is more of a cutting time in half, considering that the berry planting process is very unnerving and very annoying, especially if you don't know how to do every specific math work. And I'm no mathematician. To do this glitch is actually quite easy. Simply go to the battle tower, have a Pokemon of your choosing holding whatever item you want, and for this case, it's these berries. Throw them in the PC, save your game, pull them out of your PC, and to walk up to start another battle tower. However, you will notice that it will pause at some point before it asks you to save the game. This is because they are actually saving the game twice. First one that you saved with a pause, and then they're going to ask you to save again. If you ignore that second one and hit the reset button, it will cause it to bug out in the sense where there will be a duplicate Pokemon, one that is in your party and then one that is going to be in your PC. The glitch is quite simple, though I suggest you double check and make sure that you're doing it right. If you do it backwards, it will actually cause the reverse effect, and basically you will lose everything. So I recommend if you're doing this glitch, you do it on a Pokemon that's not that very important, like a Magikarp or Mr. Mime. Now we got a handful of berries, it's time to start turning them into Pokeblocks. Pokeblocks is basically just a button mashing game, but instead of button mashing, it's more of a quick time event, and make sure you press it at the exact point. You can actually have other NPCs, depending on which one you have, will make things a lot easier and much slower, though the berries that they offer will complement your berry specifically, so you're not having to worry about that. Though if you're lucky, you could find the berry master who, working with him, will give you the best outcome of the berries with 0 drawbacks. However, I do need to say this out because a lot of people may or may not know this one. You see, as you make a Pokeblock, it will show you a specific level and a specific feel. The level is basically just how strong and how potent it is. The number of color, if it says like orange, silver, and gold, will basically have a big old list that shows of the value it is. But our main focus is the level and the feel. Like I said, the level just shows how strong will show how strong it is and will increase the stats. However, there is also another thing called the field, which basically boils down to this. Every Pokemon has a field meter, or we can just say stomach. Every stomach capacity has a fine limit. Once you add it onto a Pokemon, let's say a single Pokeblock with a 25 feel, that Pokemon's feel is only up to 25. It's going to stay there until you add more Pokeblocks, in which it will keep increasing the feel up higher and higher and higher. Once it reaches its maximum, or in this case full, it is unable to eat more Pokeblocks and will stay at that stats indefinitely. So I suggest you make sure you save before you do any form of Pokeblocks and eating, making sure that they have the best stats for all categories, though it doesn't really need to be everything maximum, just as long as it's a decent level and it's basically around that line. Now our Pokemon's stuffed and it's now for the contest appeal, which is basically boiled down to 2 parts. Option 1 is the move sets, which will help you gain more points. However, there are other moves that are better with some drawbacks, and then there's one that are more sabotage-wise, which the NPCs here will exploit that the greatest. Especially one blonde individual that just so happens to be called a Jinx. I'm looking at you, bitch. Anyways, our main focus is using the contest combos, which are basically just 2 moves in this big old list, which will actually amplify your points of affinity. The best one and the most reliable one is the rest and store combo, which, if you're thinking about it long enough, you're basically winning the contest by taking a nap. Now keep in mind, this isn't a perfect strategy. You will be losing every once in a while, but as long as you keep doing it multiple times, you're eventually going to get this contest down. Once you get all of that and got all the ribbons, and that should be it. And now we just have to migrate towards Pokemon Platinum, which is actually what I'm going to stop right here. See, as of this recording, I'm already in Pokemon Platinum, already grinding my way there. This is a little bit of a part 1 of the multiple series I'm going to be starting at some point. So expect this next one to come in as soon as possible or never. I am very inconsistent when it comes to making videos, so hopefully I can get that fixed at some point. But what do you guys think? Is my team's messy? Are my wordings terrible? Let me know in the comments. I might be listening to them, but as of now, I'll just show you what the rest of my video has. Talk to you later.
Smart. Okay, that is a baby. Who the hell brings a baby in a smart contest? Okay, Who brings a blonde person into a contest of smartness? Watch it happen. It probably will. If it happens, I don't like. Oh, Perla. No, you are. Is this karma coming back to bite me? Because I'm not apologizing.